You mentioned the real economy. Where are the banks, where is the banking sector, where are the central banks in all this? Do they participate in, as they create money, do they create value? Are they part of the larger GDP? What can you tell us about that?
First of all, what is the link between banks and GDP? The banks have a crucial role. They are, in what we call our market economies, the decision-making control center of the entire economy. Why? Because they create the money supply and they decide who gets money for what purpose. Is this an important decision? You bet it is. In fact, that is the decision that completely reshapes the economic landscape in just a few months or years. The decision of who gets purchasing power for what purpose, newly created money. So the banks are the control center in the economy, and that's why we need to distinguish between bank lending for transactions that boost GDP, then you get high economic growth, no inflation, job creation, everything is stable, you get also less inequality, you get more equality. But if banks create money for unproductive purposes, either for consumption, then you get only nominal GDP growth, but low real GDP growth, you get inflation, that's not good, that's well recognized. But the biggest problem has been in the last 30 years, banks creating money for unproductive purposes that are asset transactions. That's not part of GDP. And when banks do this, bank lending for property, bank lending for asset, stock market, whatever financial instrument transactions, lending to private equity funds, to hedge funds, investing in financial instruments, which banks do a lot because all the leverage of these funds comes from banks, plain old bank lending, bank credit creation. So this money creation for asset transactions, of course, is pushing up asset prices, creating these asset bubbles. While it happens, it looks stable because we're all making money, we're all having returns, but they're all based on the capital gains and the expectations of capital gains, and that will continue only as long as banks continue to create new money for asset transactions. It's a game of musical chairs. If we took out all the chairs where nobody's sitting, and then only have all the chairs where you're sitting in the room, and then we take one out, and we ask everyone to stand up, we take one chair out, right? This game of musical chairs. And we have the music on, and if the music stops, everyone has to sit down, but one chair is missing. Well, this is the credit creation for financial transactions. It's a game of musical chairs. When the music stops, that's when the banks do not anymore expand credit creation for financial transactions, but they stop it or slow it. Then there won't be enough chairs for the speculators, those who've borrowed money and invested in financial instruments, to sit on. There will be bankruptcies. But the moment there are bankruptcies, banks will have non-performing loans, the banks get more risk averse, they reduce lending, then as they reduce lending, asset prices come down further, there's fewer and fewer chairs, there's more bankruptcies, and of course you will end up with a massive banking crisis. That is the mechanism.